consider instructional design art? I do. And on today's video, I'm going to tell you exactly why. Let's get started. Hey folks, and welcome on in to the nerdiest video you're going to see today. My name is Dr. Luke Hobson. I'm a senior instructional designer and program manager at MIT. I also produce quite a bit of content online about instructional design from a blog, a podcast, this YouTube channel, my courses, and then now I just wrote a book called What I Wish I Knew Before Becoming an Instructional Designer. And you can find all of this content and all my other information over at drlukehobson.com. Today's video was inspired by a task that I was given about a year ago or so for MIT. And my task was that I was to go back and to review all of the leadership courses that we have to offer and to think about how could we combine them to make one amazing ultimate technical leadership boot camp of sorts. And as I was starting to go through all of the courses and all the modules, I was just thinking about how our jobs are so creative. Because I knew that different instructional designers worked on these different programs, and each person has their own sense of style and flair that they bring to the course, and that's what makes it so unique. And as I was going through each week, it was beginning to make me wonder just what was I in for as far as for a student with the overall learning experience? What was I going to encounter? What was I actually going to do as I was progressing through every single week? And this started to get my brain thinking. And then eventually, I had this kind of epiphany and I wrote about it on LinkedIn. And it went like this. One thing that seems to surprise new instructional designers is how artistic our jobs are. I guarantee that if two IDs were put on the same project, working with the same SME, they would design the learning experience differently. This doesn't mean that one experience is right and one is wrong. While we follow best practices in research, instructional designers thrive in creativity. It's what makes this field so exciting. I wasn't expecting 300 of you to agree with me, but it was really cool to see, to go back, to read the comments, and to find out that this creativity piece has given so many of you meaning in your work. And this is why you decided to go into the instructional design field. And as I've been talking to so many different people trying to transition into instructional design, this element is missing that they don't realize about how much we actually have to do with a blank canvas and then try to figure out how to make everything come together. And I'm not sure if that's because of how, and I did mention in the status too about best practices and research, because obviously you can design some awful learning experiences if you don't do things correctly. At the same time, there isn't one absolute right answer of how an online course or program or any kind of product should look. I think that's where some people are like, but wait a minute, how do I know if I'm doing something right if there isn't some kind of model or template that I absolutely need to follow? And don't get me wrong, some universities and institutions and organizations, they do. They follow a very specific model. This is what we do. This is what our courses look like. Therefore, we want you to do the same thing. But I would argue that that limits creativity and it can slightly hinder the online learning experience because then learners know exactly what they're going to be getting into every single week. And it starts to diminish this idea of something new and exciting and relevant and engaging. And instead, they're like, well, I already know what I'm doing because it's always a reading, a discussion, and then a paper. So I know what's going to happen next week. It's the same thing. So we need to be able to change it up and bring this extra level of creativity, this form of art, into the online learning experience. So let's do a little bit of a mental exercise here. I want you to think about creating and painting the perfect fall scene. What does that look like to you? Maybe you're thinking about apple picking or changing colors of the leaves, or maybe you're thinking about jack-o'-lanterns or anything else. The thing is that none of those answers are wrong. That's your perspective, your perception of what fall means to you. Now, in the same type of sense, this can also be applied to how you design online courses and programs. Just because you think of something differently compared to what I thought about doesn't mean that your way is right and that my way is wrong. We both thought about something that was going to be able to help out the learners to achieve their goals inside of this product. So technically, what we came up with isn't wrong. Think about how if you were working on a course about networking And inside of this course, you want to be able to include a discussion. What does that discussion look like? Maybe you're just going to do a tried and true tested way of putting a discussion board within the learning management system itself. Maybe you want students to be able to interact more one another as far as for being on like a mobile platform, like with Slack. You want them to interact in real time in channels and form groups and connect over in that way. Or maybe you're thinking about putting people on LinkedIn and going and connecting into groups inside of that platform. Or perhaps you're going to be doing it on Zoom. You're going to put people into different types of breakout rooms, and then they're going to be able to discuss about networking within this platform. Or maybe you're like, you know what? We're going to do virtual reality. We're going to use Gather Town. I want people to go in, make an avatar, connect with one another, and then talk about networking from that perspective. That was just 5 different ways for you to think about discussions. And just with platforms alone, we didn't get into any of the topics about what exactly are students going to be doing with the topic of networking and to make some type of learning activity within the discussion itself. It simply was just, hey, here's 5 different ways to do a discussion right here, right now. And none of those answers are wrong. So, in a way, your learning outcomes are like paint. Your learning objectives, that's the paintbrush. And then the entire type of course experience, that is your blank canvas for you to fill in with the subject matter expert. And then in order to make the type of an online learning experience that you know is going to be meaningful, relevant, and engaging for your students. And that, folks, that's why I think of instructional design as art. It's creative. There's so many things and different types of possibilities that you can do. And I just touched upon only discussions. I didn't get into anything else as far as sort of simulations or peer grade activities or games or project-based learning, scenario-based learning. There's a million other different things that you can do. That was just touching the very, very tip of the surface. And there's so much more that you can go in down this rabbit hole and really think about it if you put your mind to it. But now that you've heard what I think, let me know what you think about this. Go down to the comments section and tell me, share your thoughts. Do you think instructional design is a form of art? Also, quick shout out to our former podcast guest, Seth Odell. He sent me over this swag for his marketing agency, Canahoma. You can learn more about his marketing agency and what they do over in that podcast episode, and be sure to check them out for any of your marketing needs. But hey, folks, that is all I have for you today. Stay nerdy out there. I'll talk to you next time.